Is there anything that you would change during your competitive years? This was, there's another question in here. I should have sorted these out a little bit better. That was kind of the same thing, but a little bit longer. Here we go. And it's from my friend, Brian Carroll. So, what would you implement that you have learned after retiring that you think could have helped you make a 1,000-pound squat in competition? This could be an exercise, an approach, or form. All answers are acceptable except should have trained harder or not as hard. That's a good question. I mean, it's the same question essentially as what this other one is, but this one's worded a little bit differently because these what would you change type questions, they hit me a little bit different than maybe they hit other people because I can't, so what's the point of it if I can't? Because I was doing everything that I knew at that time to be the best I could possibly be. I was reaching out to all the best people that I could find to be able to help me get better. So, and this was, it was the first priority in my life. So it's not like when I say I was reaching out to people, I was reaching out to as many people as I could get a hold of, and before getting to Westside, training with as many people that were all-time world record holders or, legends in the game that most people probably wouldn't know the names now of Bob Wall, George Crawford, and, other ones that were around the Toledo area and even Detroit for that matter. And they helped a lot, man. So I was doing the work, man. I was going everywhere. I was reading my ass off. I was studying everything that I could. And, and as I got better as a lifter, and even after coming to Westside and coming to Columbus, that process never stopped. So it wasn't just Louis where, I'll touch on that, but Louis is a vital, significant person in my life and with training probably more so than anybody else, but it didn't just stop there, because there were coaches that were coming in, and I got a degree in exercise science and nutrition. So this is what I love to do. This is pretty much all I fucking study and all I was doing. So I was asking them, I formed a relationship with Mel Siff. I formed a relationship with all these other people. So I wasn't relying 100% on Louis, but I still kind of was, but still pulling in all this. The point that I'm trying to make here is I was doing everything I possibly could do during the competitive years that I could do, and more so than what probably anybody else was doing, just because of the passion for the sport and the passion for the training. So that's why when I get asked questions like this, I did everything. Like, what the hell else am I supposed to do? You have to kind of live that to know what I'm talking about, where I'm coming from there. Brian worded this a little bit differently though, because he's talking about what I learned after. And my last competitive meet, I think it was 2005 or something like that. So I've been around the sport. I've been around top level lifters, fuck my whole life, and more so probably after retiring than before retiring. That's not any kind of dig on Westside, because there were great lifters there. I trained with great lifters, fucking ridiculously strong lifters, crazy fucking lifters. It's, but that was conjugate, right? So everybody was kind of operating from that same system. When I started sponsoring lifters through Elite FTS and going that direction, I started to get exposed to how they were training and what they were doing with their training and how different it was from what a conjugate approach would be. So say it was more a block approach or even a linear approach, or the higher caliber lifters, they don't operate really on any of those approaches. They're operating on their own approach, so that was, you know, the big takeaway is how do you develop your own approach, which is some of the other questions that are in here. With that in mind, knowing what I know now, and Brian specifically asking about this 1,000-pound squat, because my best squat was 940. When I did that one, it was easy, but it was rare. And the reason I'm saying that it was rare is towards the end of my career, I had a shaking problem like you couldn't believe, which I didn't know how to solve. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know where it was coming from. I had, you know, orthos and people telling me that your back's got herniations and all this other shit, or it's your hips, or it's, you know, I did everything I could try to do to be able to figure that out. And the way that I figured it out was shit, maybe a decade later, training with, actually with JL, when he first started getting into the RPR, was working on me and working on different breathing things. And the way that he was doing RPR at the time, or be activated or whatever it was at the time, I may have been the first person he worked on. It was the most painful shit I've ever had done in my life. It was awful. I never want to repeat that again. It was awful, and it lasted like an hour and a half. So part of this whole thing is I'm trying my best to not let him know it hurts, which was almost impossible. It was impossible to do. He told me to breathe through my nose first, and then breathe through my mouth. And then that helped, right? So I put that together a little bit more the next time I went into squat. That actually was the day after, I believe. And some of his voodoo shit actually may have helped, but the breathing was a huge thing, because before I took my time when I took the weight out, and I switched the breathing around. I started to pull everything through my nose first, and then a little bit more through my mouth. And it was the most stable I've ever been in my life. And I know now if I hear the plates shaking a little bit, I didn't breathe. I didn't brace, whatever you want to call it, right. And had I known that back then, I would have squatted over 1,000 pounds. There's no doubt in my mind. You know, if I didn't know that, because the strength was there, you know, based upon max effort exercises, other things people were doing in the gym that were the same, I don't want to elaborate on this because I didn't do it, so it makes no difference. But the strength was definitely there for that. But there's no way I would have gotten out of the rack. So had somebody, you know, gently lowered it on me, you know, in a squat position that was with the knee slightly already bent a quarter of the way down, I probably could have done it, but that's not how the sport works. That first is the biggest thing. So that would be one of them, 100%. The other would be wearing gear in training, which now is, the sport's all raw, but wasn't always the case.